All right. So, okay, so here's my desktop shot, which is, hopefully we got enough light. I have like more light than I can imagine. I'm looking at the sun. So here were a few of the things that I sent you guys, right? We had a little inspiration. I love this just minimal, right, look. Mown, and you know, that word where you take the hay in. Anyway, you know, very small, a few trees, you know, not perfectly drawn, but back, and there's actually a lot of color, even though it's a limited palette, right? And so that's kind of what we're going for. Let me show you what we worked on. So I had a view out my, in my neighborhood, right? I had this great little hump of a tiny, and then kind of as you drive further along, you know, hayfields here, and just a little bit of scrub and brush. And so we ended up doing something like this, sort of show, you know, the tracks in the field here. And let's see if we can, what I love is we can actually zoom in here a little bit. So what I just, some color back here to leave a tiny little bit of white. I tried to keep like Andrew Wyeth in my mind, right? You know, how he would do this, maybe how he would paint. I mean, obviously, you know, we're aspiring to that, right? But so as I was driving around doing errands today, I came across, this is actually the same road, but direction. And so I thought, you know, we should maybe give this one a try. You know, keeping in mind using the same kind of colors as the picture that I did this. So it would help if I had paper. First one that we did was on rough, and it worked really well, and I think I'm out of rough paper. We also did a fox, right? Which is, he came out pretty cute. We just did a quick little study. Let's look here. So we've got, you know, all my paper is cut as well. Okay, and then she needs. So we've been using these placemats, these little plastic placemats, and they've worked really well. And you know, mobile, you can pick them up. The Arches paper has, you know, you can use both sides. There's a watermark here. Oh gosh, you can almost, wait, there we go. You can see the water. Technically, you know, if the watermark is in your picture, you want to have it, if you're not going to really have the watermark show. I like the back of the paper because it's got more texture. So I am using the back. This is their regular cold press finish, and it's you know, 140 pounds. So we're going to use this. Let's move. Sorry. Okay. Hold, please, as we try to move that up a little bit. Okay. Oh, this is nice. Let me show you one more thing about this. Alright, I can actually... Where? Okay. Alright, so back to where we were. We're going to tape this down. I usually, right, we're going to use half an inch on the paper and half an inch on whatever you're taping on. And you want to burnish this down you know, this picture's got a lot of white in it, so technically we don't really have to be taping it down, but I like to, just in case we end up doing a wash. We're going to do the sky first. I always like working back to front. So I've got my hair dryer out too, and I've actually figured out how I can mute it so you don't have to hear that while I'm drawing my paper. But let's just tape all this down. Okay. Now this is our afternoon class, which usually includes a glass of wine too, so I apologize for not having any right now, but I've got some seltzer, so that's not as exciting. But if you'd like to, you know, go grab yourself a glass of wine. We've discovered that it does help loosen everybody up a little bit. So that is nice. Okay. So let's sketch this. I'm not going to really worry about the fox per se. Here's my B pencil, which is dark, yucky dark. Okay. You know, when you're driving around or something and you see an interesting scene that you think, oh, maybe, you know, I'd like to paint that or something. Hopefully there's something in the picture that has drawn your eye to it. And, you know, in general, what you're looking for is a composition that kind of pulls your you know, the viewer through the picture, right? You want, you know, if we can use this as an example, right? This guy right here, you know, what I've got is, and we're just going to be sketching kind of loosely here of hay in the front, and then we've got a kind of a road going across, and some other lines, and so we've got this sort of zigzag pattern, which you know, unconsciously, it sort of pulls your eye across the page. In general, we try not to have the horizon line right smack in the middle of the picture, but there are no rules, and, you know, as you look at things, you'll notice, you know, kind of Andrew Wyeth had something right smack in the middle too. But why don't we move this up a tiny bit, since our sky is kind of all gray, and you know, I'm not going to erase lines because I don't, that can kind of ruin the paper. So I'm just sort of doing this as a guide, and I've got too many lines on here and I can't really see where I am. So I'm going to try and put in a few little trees to sort of show me where I am here. This tree here over on the right is sort of an interesting thing in that it kind of frames the view. So it might be something that I want to put in. I'm not going to do it until the very end because it's dark and I don't have to worry about doing anything dark first, although it does have a little snow on it. So anyway, I'm going to think about that. We'll probably put it in. Not necessarily the whole thing here, right? We need to simplify this, right? We've got a nice picture, but we want to emphasize some elements and, you know, eliminate others. We're not going to do this in a way that's, you know, photorealistic. We're trying to do something that kind of gives you an impression. So if I want to be doing it with these muted colors, I'm gonna grab brushes. I've got a lot of brushes here, right? So I've got a nice big fat round brush. I've got my nice the flats, which I really like, and I go back and forth, so we'll use a bunch of them. And what I'm thinking of is let's start doing a little bit of a sky. This is some of my blues here. And obviously, there's no reason to have all these colors, right? But this is my latest iteration of palettes, so we're going to use this for a while. So this is for, all the blues all together here. And what's worked out nicely is that, this palette is just for these colors, so I tend to make less mud because the blues kind of all go together. So even though, anyway, I'm happy with this thing. It's a metal palette, and it comes empty, so you can just fill it with your own colors. All right, so we are looking for something. Been having fun with some unusual colors. Payne's gray would be perfect. Even a little Prussian blue, whatever your favorite kind of grayish blue is. This is something called, and some paper towels. Just spilled it on everything already. We have a couple options, right? We could do I could wet the paper first. Or I could use an enormous brush, right? So what I'm going to do is kind of come in here and just, I had the paint on my brush, so I didn't want to waste it. So now I'm just using water, and I'm going to just bring this down, and we're going to use, a lot of the white of the paper for things. There's Peggy. There's Peggy. Hi, Peggy. And while this, what's interesting about this color, it's called Soda Light. Right? It's a brand called Daniel Smith, and they make very unusual paints in that sometimes it's just a single mineral. So it can dry very, in a very granular way. Now, the great thing about this plastic palette, right, is I can pick it up and move it, right? And if I'm going to keep Andrew Wyeth in mind, right? He never has a boring sky. There's always something kind of weird and dramatic going on. I'm kind of, sort of trying to paint around this tree because I might try and get a little bit of white snow on it. But we'll see what happens. So what I'm using is a very wet brush, and I'm not scrubbing or anything like that. I barely touch the paper because I want to have the water move things around, and I don't want to scrub and have the paper pulp kind of start to come up, right? The more I touch the paper, the rougher the surface can get, the more it sort of gets a little pilly. So let's kind of move this around. We're going for sort of a light color because we're trying to get that moody winter that we all saw today, I think, right? So we could try and blot this, but what I'd rather do is move it up and down and just try and, as we do this, it's starting to evaporate a little bit. So it's getting a little slower. If you've got a hair or, a little bit of lint or something. Don't try to get it out. Just wait till it dries and then you can just brush it off. So let's get this moving up a little bit. Oops, sorry about that. Okay. Now if I want, grab like a clean paper towel here. And let's see if we can, I'm just going to try and blot a little bit of it. I don't really want clouds per se, but I want sort of a light and a dark kind of in the sky here. We'll see. I'm going to grab a little bit more water. Now, normally I wouldn't do this because I'm probably going to create a bloom, but I'm thinking it might be an okay thing to have a bloom in the picture. So a bloom is where you've introduced a lot of water, and the rest of your picture is kind of drying already. So the paint kind of moves with the extra water over to the dry area, but it doesn't go any further because, the area that's evaporating and drying, the water doesn't sort of move in the same amount, right? It doesn't have the same amount of flow as the rest of it. So we'll see. We might end up, if we're lucky, creating a couple blooms. Right? So we've got some strange atmospheric weather going on. Now, often I will let this dry, put something underneath here so that if I want the paint to flow in a certain direction, I'll have it dry, not necessarily flat, right? You want to make sure that it's not gonna buckle on you and have a puddle of paint right in the middle or something. So this is the time where you've really got to watch everything and sort of just watch it as it dries here. So are we all good? All right. Okay. I have to figure out where Yvonne went today. That's okay. All right, let's take a look at this. Okay, so I've already taken some paint off, but I think as long as things are still wet, right, you can kind of play with stuff a little bit. So let's see if we can introduce, right, I'm using my big flat brush here, and I'm just going to try and introduce a bank of clouds back here. So I'm trying not to, put a ton of water down, right? If I put a ton of water down, I'm going to have it's all going to move. But my brush is not that wet. So it's going to let me sort of move stuff around a little bit. So this is nice because this is all just one color, which is unusual for me. I usually put a bunch of colors in. Okay, but I'm going to clean my brush. Let's see if what happens if we add a little water here. That's definitely going to create a bloom. Blooms are fun when you want them there. It's only when they happen by accident that people are not happy with them. Okay. That's interesting. So I should probably let this dry. And why don't we, all right, see, she's moved it up and we've got a nice kind of cloud formation going there. The trick is if I move it and out of my sight, right? I might end up having it dry in a way I don't like, but why don't we just sort of move it over here a little bit. You can kind of watch it. And I thought we could try, while we're waiting for that to dry, we could do a little fox. If she can find the fox. Let's see. Okay. Wait. Fox are hard to find. There they are. Okay. So this is the one that everybody got, and I thought we would just use this one to start with. Maybe paint all over her. Okay. You know, we use often a light table to kind of put things on, you know, or hold your picture up to a window where you can sort of see through stuff, and just kind of trace out, because our interest is mostly in painting. But since we've got you here and all, I thought maybe we could do a little sketching also. This guy's pretty cute. Why don't we try that? He looks like he's listening to something. So let me show you how I sort of sketch stuff out. We'll have a tiny little drawing lesson also. Right, so if we're going to work on this guy right here, let's see if we can move it in a bit. Okay. All right. So I'm going to make him larger than this, right? I want him to kind of cover my whole little square of paper here. And, you know, this is, you know, like basic drawing here, in that I always scribble, basically. We would just try and get a couple shapes that you see here. And I try and lay it out on the page and sort of, you know, estimate, you know, what I've got, what I see, right? You're just sort of teaching your hand how to draw what your eye is seeing. So the easiest way to do that, right, that all the books tell you about, is to divide things into shapes, right? So we've got his, you know, his body is basically an oval, and his little legs are here. We've got a nice long tail, which is going to go off the page because I didn't leave enough room. We can move him over. This is why we just sketch for a bit. All right, so we're going to try to move him over. Normally, I wouldn't be drawing this dark, and what I often do is I will erase at the end once I'm done painting. But let's see if we can get a little leg here. Sometimes it's almost easier to try to notice the negative shapes first. Nose. Forehead comes out, right? He's kind of round. Let's make this longer. Okay. It looks like Shifu from Kung Fu Panda. And my little eyes here. And he's almost smiling. That's pretty funny. Okay, a little narrower here. Anyway. Usually when I'm just doing you know, a painting, I just do the outline. I'm not interested in really getting the texture on here because the whole thing is supposed to be done in paint. But let's move him up a little. Okay. So let's get some brown out. So here is the little brown palette. And I have also got, all right, let's get out a round brush. So this one's a nice pointy one. Should have wet all these ahead of time, and I didn't, so I'm going to come in and wet them now. Have a look at my sky. Looks like it's doing all right. It's like cooking, right? You have to go check it. Just check your picture. Make sure it's not boiling over. Okay. So this guy's a little pale. He's not quite as, it's just the photo, right? It's not as bright as some of the others. But I'm going to grab my brush and we're just going to put a little bit on the back here. Kind of maybe change things from where my pencil line is. We'll see. And so this is now just water, right? I'm going to clean my brush. And before this line has dried, I'm going to just wet this a little bit. Right? And I always usually work fairly wet, so my brush has always got a lot of paint on it. Let's see if we can make a nice big teal. Nope, he's gone off the page. And let's try, use a little sepia. Let's see how that works for doing some legs down here. Right. So, you know, the key is to kind of notice, you know, as much detail as you can, but then kind of, you know, simplify it a little bit. So we've got some nice dark legs. And I'm trying to pay attention to that, the negative space between these two front paws there. Maybe this is, I think I've got a little bit of brown in my brush. So often what I'll do is I'll hold something, I'll hold my brush sort of straight up and down, and that kind of will allow me to give this a little bit of fur texture. Here. Okay, so we want to also, I don't necessarily need more paint. I can borrow from here. He's wet, so we haven't got a lot of, you know, dry brush that we can use right now. But, oof, okay, this is interesting. Let's give this a try. Here's a little black. I'm going to put that on. Often I'll turn my picture, right? So it's easier to get a line that's, you know, pointy at the end if you're sort of pulling it down. But, you know, we're still working really wet, so everything's going to sort of blend together. And that's okay because we're not really, you know, again, we're trying to simplify this. Just when it's color. Let's try a little red. Between. I've got this is just straight burnt sienna, and it's beautiful. It's like the perfect color. They should just call it fox. Alright, so his head's a little bit lighter. Right, if you make a mistake, just blot it. Do it again. lost a little bit of his white fur up here underneath his head. So we'll take a little of that off. We'll take a little of this off. Anyway, you know, for our purpose for putting him in the picture, we really kind of just need the shape of him. We don't need a lot of detail because he's going to sort of be a small element. So let's see, we're going to have a little nose here. He looks like he's got his eyes closed, which is kind of funny. Alright. Oh, and we do see his chin a little bit. So put some on and just kind of take it off. Alright. Let's see if we maybe want him a little whiter over here. So I'm just going through and I'm kind of adding a few other colors just to get him a little more interesting. I'll wait on his face because it's going to be easier if it's not so wet. Right? We're going to lose some of our detail, but let's get a little more color on his nose at least. Yeah, and this one a little too high up, so once that dries, we'll see if we can scrub some of that off a little bit. Anyway. Yeah, I kind of lost his front leg there. Let's go back in while it's still a little wet. Just darken that up a little bit. Maybe. If I take some of the water out, I have a little more control where things go. Just a little sketch. Oh, and actually this is actually mostly fur down there. Okay, there, looks a little better. So let's leave that for a second. Are you guys good? Have you got questions, anything? We're okay? Thumbs up? Okay. All right. So let's let him dry for a minute. And let's go back and see how our picture is doing. Yeah, so that's drying nicely. We got a little bit of texture there. Okay, still not perfectly dry. Let me grab my hair dryer. We'll put this on mute for 2 seconds. Okay. So I'm seeing a note from you guys talking about the volume. Now, if I turn the volume up on, now I can hear you, but
I think you can hear us. We can only hear you.
okay, this is better. Huh, interesting. Normally, if I've got the volume up on my desktop, and there is volume on here, right? It's not muted. Okay. Usually I have a big reverb when I do that, so obviously something's different. Peggy, how you doing?
I'm fine. Sorry I was so late.
That's okay.
My car was having issues.
Oh, that's always fun. That's fun. All
So
right.
I'm just watching.
Yeah, that's fine. That's what just all we talked about here. Okay, so let's see what we can do. Oh, we got a shadow somewhere. Where's that shadow? More light. Oh, the shadows from the water. There we go. Okay. All right. You know, the whole picture here is virtually white, right? I was debating about doing a kind of a gray snow, but it's really nice to have the white of the snow as a contrast to the sky. So let's see, we're looking for, I've got a little flat brush here. It's 1/4 inch, and very helpful for doing this kind of rows of crops here. But since we did dry the back here, let's work back to front. And all right, so I am going to try and no, I'm lost. Where is my participants? There we go. Okay. So since we're still going, come on. All right. Can you hear me still? Can you guys hear me still? No? Can you hear me? Can you hear me? How about now? Can you hear me? Okay. God, that is so weird. We might not have sound on this recording is what I'm realizing. But let's not go there right now. I don't want to know. Okay. So I've got my brown paints out here. I'm going to go back to the blue. And use almost the same color that actually is the same color. I'm going to use the same color that I used in the sky. And I'm going to start putting in some background. All right, we got some mountains back here, a little hill. And I'm going to use just the tip of the brush to kind of show the tops of the trees. Actually, we need to have that one be a little higher up because we are doing one in front. All right, so we're going to move that up a little bit. This is just water. Okay, so we need that kind of high up, and then we're going to start doing another one a little down, and this time I'm going to add a little kind of little brownish gray to this. So this is is wet right now, but I can do it a little next to it. Okay, and we are still thinking. Okay, we're going to keep Andrew Wyeth in mind, right? So we're going to sort of do the same thing. You know, you can experiment with whichever you've got to see what works the best for this. But it doesn't have to have all this detail per se. And let's see if we're going to go in front of here. We're going to lose a little bit, but I think that might be okay. Let's darken it. Maybe we leave a little bit of these bits of white. Maybe they look a little like snow. And I've got a kind of a really boring color. So I'm going to take some of that fantastic burnt sienna, and lost all my little white bits, but oh well. And we're going to add a little of that in the front. And we want it to blend a little bit more, so here's a little extra water. And then we're going to kind of keep going across here. Mix my blue and my brown. And we're just going to make, you know, a few little trees in the back here. It sounded like, what's his name? The big hair. I can't remember. Okay. So we got a faraway hill. This little line here is the road. So let's see. Can she actually put the road in one shot? Let's give it a try. So we're going to try and do that. The thing that we want is a nice wet brush. We want, right, kind of like baseball, right? You sort of start where you are going to start, and you can, you know, put your line down, and you want to be looking at where the road ends, right? If you're like, what I meant with the baseball is you sort of, when you're throwing a ball, you look to where you want it to be, and they say, right? Okay, so let's see. You got to have enough paint in your brush to have it go all the way. Woo. Okay. We'll just take a little of that off. How much can she mess it up, right? Just have to cover that with something. Okay, so we've got a road. Now with that, let's try the flat, all right? Let's see how that does. So I'm going to grab a little yellow ochre and some burnt sienna, and I'm going to try and create this sort of break in the field here. So it's still very hard to, you know, go backwards, and the best thing to do is to actually turn this, right? Because your arm just naturally, it's just naturally easier to go down. So let's do this. It's not exactly what I wanted it, but that's okay. I'm gonna grab a little more. Yellow ochre, and before that dries, I'm going to kind of just give it a little bit of, I'm trying to, you know, play with your brush, right? Turn it around a couple different directions, and let's see if we can get that to look like trees. So maybe not. Let's switch. Around here. I'm doing it, I'm kind of just pulling it up, right? You can do it with the flat brush also. And I'm trying to just create some, you know, tree-like foliage without having to paint every single branch and tree, because we are far away here, so we're not going to see all this detail. You know, you're gonna see the color. Your brain is going to know what it's looking at, even though it's slightly abstract, which is a lovely thing. I like that. Okay, so let's see if we can get these guys a little bigger. Here's a little bit of kind of green I'm sort of introducing, just to make it look, you know, we've got lots of blue sky and things, so we want to introduce a little bit more bluish gray to this. And let's see if we can get a tree or two in front here. Okay. Once more, we're going to turn it upside down. You know, I always do this, right? I have my, you know, what I'm working from, right in front of me. So I'm just going to pick a spot here. And because I like working from the bottom up, it's much easier to put a tree in, right? You put the trunk in first, and then, you know, we can do some little lines around it. Let's see if you like that or not. Can add a little extra color. You know, let the water move it around a little bit. Let's see. These are kind of funny because they're in the snow, right? So they are, you don't really see everything. Anyway. One of the things that's very tricky about this is painting and talking at the same time is hard. You know, I don't have the same attention to detail. It's hard to talk and paint together, but I would rather talk than have 2 hours of no talking. So we're gonna keep doing that. Okay, let's see if we can get a larger tree up here. So we're gonna try. You can try it, you know, straight up instead, but you still have to, you know, start at the bottom and go up. Right, so give yourself a few branches, and then right, everything gets a little bit smaller. And this is going to depend on what kind of brush you have, right? If you can actually do this. Now it got wet, right? It's still wet there, so I lost my trunk kind of in the middle. When it dries, I'll go back in and add a little bit. But let's put some nice evergreen trees in, even though they'll be hardly evergreen because it's so gray. So let's see, we got some green and gray here. And these are almost, you can't even tell that they have any color, really. But I want to, let's see if we can try and, nope. Let's put a couple in here. It's still wet, so. You know, the nice thing about working wet is everything looks nice and soft and far away. Oops. Okay, let's try a few over here. So I've gone back to this flat because these guys are really almost triangles. And, you know, I just kind of keep turning my brush to get the shape I want. And it usually doesn't work, so you end up making the tree larger and larger. Right? That happens. Let's try one more back here. Let's drop a little bit of other. here's a little brown in these, right? We want them not too green. They've got to be, right, what we're doing is trying to create the same atmosphere on everything. So, you know, there's a lot of mist and kind of umber. So nothing is going to be the color that it normally is. Let's get a few more things in the back. But, you know, it's fun to, you know, look at other painters, right? So, you know, Andrew Wyeth is just so well known for doing these, you know, what we think of as monochromatic pictures, but, you know, the more you look at them, the more you notice that they're just incredibly subtle colors. So that's what we're going for. We want a bunch of different colors on this. Okay. You know what? I think I'm going to go back to my round. So what we're trying to do is pick the best brush, particular tree, and pick the round. In this particular instance is easier. Let's see if we can get a snowy field right there, and maybe have it go down again. So this is quite green, but I can add some brown to it later, sort of before it dries. Okay, so we're trying to create, you know, a grouping, a copse of trees there, I think. And I think we need one more in the back here. Something like that. So we're just going to work on the, you know, a little bit at a time. You know, I should probably, even if I am going to put that tree in the picture, the big tree, I can kind of paint around it, or through it almost, and put these guys on. I think maybe I want to make this a little more, a little paler. So before I get too much further, right now I've got everything is the same value. So in order to show that we've got more fog, you know, in places, I'm going to add some water, and may even, I lost my nice hill there, so we're just going to do that. I'm going to blot this a little bit. Right, now we have more fog. That's nice. In fact, maybe this is a little too dark right here. So let's add some water. We lose. Okay. You know, we can add more trees, but that's something we can do at the end because we're really just leaving everything white. So let's see if we can now start to show that we've got a lot of depth in this picture. And I want to add a few more kind of hills here, right? So here's one. This is particularly nice. What I'm noticing is, you know, sometimes you see the line of trees and sometimes you don't. So we're going to take this, use my flat brush, and I'm going to just try and pull that up a little bit. Maybe. If it works. Yeah, I can, I forgot. Excuse me, the flat brush is actually really good at doing trees. keep it nice and clean on the other side here. I could take a little water out and I would have more control here.
Jenny,
Yeah.
I missed the beginning. Did you wet the bottom half first also?
The bottom half of the
Painting. Like the foreground is mostly white, but it's not all white. You can do that shadow.
oh, that's just pencil line, Peggy. It's all
So it's dry.
it just did the sky. Yep, this is just the white of the paper.
Okay.
Excuse me, I'm sorry. I'm joking. Sorry. Okay. So let's see. Goodness. All right, let's try pulling some of these out. All right, so I'm trying to build up the kind of the interest in the picture here. Brown, maybe we've got some kind of scrub in between. What's neat about this is it kind of stops sometimes. You don't see as much. Okay, so let's also start to go a little further down here. So I've still got that burnt sienna and the yellow ochre. And I've got a kind of a ridge line here. Goodness. Flatten my brush out again and sort of pull this up. So because the paper is dry, it kind of creates this texture that looks a little like scrub brush or something. So wet a little. Tone down the color, adding something else, and then let's see where we're gonna go here. So we've got a little line here that kind of runs across the field, and then there's some areas over here that have maybe it's more like a dip, so there's more foliage. Or maybe the snow is kind of blown away in this area. So let's sort of add some color. And I'm just, my brush is too wet. I was trying to do a dry brush thing here, but that's okay. I'll just... yellow. Okay, we can add more elements as we go. So I'm going to go further down here, and I'm not sure what's going to happen in the front. The front might be kind of simple. So let's see. We're going to grab something and start to go across. It's okay, we're going to go right in front of the tree. And here's my, woohoo, that was quite a dip. Well, I guess we have a little bit of a dip there. Rather than fix it, I'm going to drag another line kind of right next to it. And now I'm kind of pushing the paint, trying to get, if I sort of drag my brush along, I can kind of get a little bit of a something that's going to look a little like foliage or the field. So I didn't use masking fluid or crayon on this, but let's see. So here's one of our white crayons. There it is. All right, so let's see if this will help as far as getting, well, see, I don't want to draw it on the tree because we can't get this off. It's kind of on there. But this will act sort of as a resist. Let's see if that works for kind of showing some of these crop lines. Okay. Here's a wider flat. Crayon. So I'm just going to drag this across. Let's see. Ooh, it's too dry. There we go. See, there it is. There's the crayon kind of makes the texture that I was trying to get. And it's a lot easier. And I can still blot some if I got too much. I can paint it still in a line. You know, and let's remember, right, we don't have to show every little detail, but let's try back to the smaller flat. There, right over there. Okay. All right. So let's take something like this. Kind of. Let's try it this way. That's better. So straight up and down works better. You know, I'm just trying to show a little bit of texture. You know, and it doesn't have to be perfect. It's all what we're, you know, we're doing an impression of a field. So let's try a couple more lines. You could try just pulling it up a little bit. I'm not even sure if I've got a fan brush. I must have one somewhere. Let's see if we can find one. There. So this is something called a fan brush, and it works for a couple things, like grass, but it's tricky because it's very uniform, right? So in one sense, it's going to work okay for this. It's actually probably what. Oh no, it looks like. Let's see, Mr. Wyeth. It doesn't look like he used a fan. Yeah, he might have used a fan brush on some of that. But it'll give you a kind of a texture that, you know, will look like something that's sort of the same. It does work for grass pretty well. So we can just use it a little. Drag it across. You know. You know, and what I'm doing is trying to not use exactly the same color for all of this. I'm trying to introduce a few other different colors right? Because it's so, monochromatic. We want to make it look interesting. Anyway, let's see. I almost feel like maybe we should stick the tree in right now, even though I haven't got anything else done here. Let's see. I think that might be kind of fun. Okay, so we've got this quite a bit, darker than the rest of the picture. And I don't necessarily need to make it dark yet, right? Because it's actually got a few lighter elements. So let's see. One. I'm going to use this flat because it's almost exactly the same size as the tree limbs. So, the key thing about a tree is you want it slightly less, slightly wider at the bottom. The nice thing is we've got some snow in front. So let's sort of pull this down. And I can fill in more later around it. I want to make sure that I cover up those lines that I had. Maybe I can try and leave a tiny little bit of white on it if she can ever remember. And I'm going to scrub anywhere that's, I can see the background through it. So I don't necessarily want that to happen. Now, I also don't have to draw every single tree limb. I can do it however I want here. I do want to put that little knot hole in. And while it's wet, I'm kind of adding a little bit of darker color. And, trying to make it kind of interesting. Okay, so let's see. If we start with the kind of brownish gray, this does have a little bit of snow on it, so I have to decide how I'm going to do that. Use a wet brush and kind of pull this up. I'm sort of wiggling my hand a little bit because I don't want it to be perfect. Right? I find that helps a lot, so you less apt to draw something perfectly straight, because we've been looking at these trees with no leaves on them for a while, and none of them are straight at all. So things are get smaller as they go further out from the tree. I'm going to put one of those guys in and the larger big branch over here. So let's see. And I'm trying to work really wet, but I'm going to start where the tree trunk, where the limb starts. And let's kind of pull this. And what I'm also trying to do is sort of pull my brush away from the paper as I go further up. And that way, I'm getting a smaller branch as I go further up. So let's see if we can get some white snow on the other side of that. Let's see. Can always go back. All right, so we want one more. I'm going to take it further up here. Maybe two. Looks like some things. A little lumpy thing. No, that's not what I wanted right there, but we're going to have to add, let's see, too white. Let's see what we do. I could stick with this brush. Let's see if that will help. If I can turn it to the side and start, I still like, for me, it helps to draw it, from the trunk out, rather than going out and in. And I'll do, as much as I can with this brush. And maybe we will switch to a smaller brush. Ooh. A little later. I can also decide if I want, do I want any of this to come across. It's a nice sort of frame for some of this. Let's see. It's kind of hard to do something so nice and loose. So let's see, maybe it's, just have to figure out where it's going to start. Maybe it goes up and out of the picture and kind of back down. So keep that baseball thing in mind. Right, sort of know where you're heading with it. Okay, let's take a look off and see. Probably time to switch brushes. And probably time to turn it too. All right, so another thing that I like to do is kind of hold my pinky on my paper so that I am kind of up above it a little bit. But putting your pinky down gives you a little stability. So you don't have to, your hand's not shaking and kind of fumbling. But let's start adding a few. We'll see about this. I'm going to add a lot of smaller ones. So, what I'm noticing is that some go down. Something's new growth here. Some are going up. I'm not going to want to put all of that in, right? We're going to simplify a little bit. It's interesting, this time of year, honestly, because we've been painting trees a lot lately, it's like now I'm really noticing that, all the branches are different on every kind of tree. You can really, even without the leaves, you can figure out what kind of tree it is because they all grow differently. Okay, so we'll add a little bit more to that, but let's get a few over here. I really like this little one. Like that. So let's try to drag a little more color on here. This is a nice little bit. It's a little brown instead of black. It's dark. Take a little water off your brush so that it's tricky. And we'll see. We'll add a few more too as we go. But so now we got this, big tree over here that's kind of framing the picture. We got a lot of distance, kind of an interesting sky. The sky's done. We can't go back once we've started to paint on top of it. And, we can come in here and do, here's the dry brush again with the blue. All right, let's see what happens if I just kind of drag this across a little bit. All right, then we start to get a little, there we have, a little snow, little bluish snow. It's still pretty pale, and it's actually pretty much the same color as the sky. But that'll give us a little bit of depth. You can decide if you want to add some other places. Anyway, you can do, as much as or as little as you want. I'm going to come back in here and wet the tree because it's dried a little too uniformly and looks a little boring. So let's just add some water and let it re-dry. Right? Just going to let it dry again. Let's see what happens. Like what I'm trying to do is create a few blooms in the trunk here. Okay, so let that dry. A little more water there. Okay. So that's a start. It looks like we recorded. I don't know if we've gotten any sound, but anyway, let me stop recording